Welcome to VR Hermits, a podcast about virtual reality development. I'm Dave Ramsey.
And I'm Joe Simpson. How's it going, Dave?
Doing good, Joe. How you doing?
Doing good. A little bit of a dicey start there. So we missed last week for some reasons I don't really want to go into. I just didn't really have much to talk about last week with some other stuff going on. But I've got some topics this week, and then we've got kind of a larger and more interesting topic from you for the second half and or 4/5 of the podcast. So I'm going to dive in, unless you have any quick updates.
Nope, go for it.
Okay, so something that isn't particularly developer related, but it was kind of neat in VR. So I've got this Windows mixed reality headset. I've got two of them, and been using the Samsung Odyssey more and more. And I decided last episode, I recorded the episode on the PC, which I don't think I'm going to do again. I wasn't really crazy about the audio quality. But then I did all of the show editing on that PC in Audition while in the mixed reality Cliff House, which was like kind of cool, but didn't really add anything to the workflow other than like I was less bored than I normally am. It's kind of a boring process of just listening to the entire show again and cutting out stupid sounds and grunts, and we don't really edit for content anymore. So, what you hear in the show is pretty much the conversation as it happens, but we both make the occasional, smacking of the desk sound or whatever that just needs to get cut out, and they cut out, a couple dozen of those per episode. So it's usually a pretty boring process of just like listening to the exact same conversation that I just had. So doing it in VR was kind of fun. I played Universal Paperclips in another window the whole time. And then I started getting multiple sessions running, but that didn't really work because of the way that Universal Paperclips caches data in the browser.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was neat. I don't think I'll be doing it again anytime soon.
What you need to do is use different browsers. So like one in Chrome, one in Edge, and one in like Safari, and just...
Yeah, well, only Edge is the only one that's actually a UWP app that will show up as its own window in the Cliff House. Everything else shows up in the desktop window, which I had full of Audition. So it's pretty much Edge or using Chrome on the desktop.
Gotcha. I didn't realize that the UWP part was a limitation or a requirement, shall we say.
Yeah, so all of the standalone windows that you see when you look at my Cliff House, those are all UWP apps. Only UWP apps can fit in there. I did come up with I didn't come up with this. I read an article and followed the instructions, some documentation from Microsoft on how to turn pretty much any web app into a UWP app. And it takes about 5 minutes. So there's a couple things that I wanted to have in their own window. And it didn't work with Google Keep, but I think that's just a limitation with how Google is structuring that app. But there's some web apps that I can make. I may eventually just make a couple of, low quality, quick and dirty web apps that just run on the machine, and then make them into UWP apps so I can use them in the Cliff House. But like I said, editing, it didn't really add anything to the experience doing it in VR, but it didn't really take anything away from the experience. It's pretty simple. Like I used basically a mouse and 2 buttons on the keyboard for the entire workflow. And running the VR session didn't seem to slow the machine down enough to affect Audition. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a while before VR replaces a mouse and keyboard and a monitor the way that I want it to. I would love to work like that all the time, but it didn't improve anything. It didn't particularly slow me down, but it probably did a little bit, if I'm honest. But I don't know, the HoloLens version of that would probably be way cooler, where I could have multiple windows just pinned around my office in varying orientations. But at this point, the the Windows mixed reality version of that, which is kind of like, whatever.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like ways that, because just spacing out the windows is not actually going to make me more productive.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking that I might actually be able to use an equivalent of something like spaces in VR,
Yeah.
so that like focusing on a small collection of windows would then blow them up. We pretty much need eye tracking to really make that work, but just focusing on so I can have all these little small windows and then just shift context from window to window just by looking at the window, and then it would expand out and it would be in that one.
Yeah, that would
Or
be
something
pretty
like
cool.
that.
I did try to, I set up like 8 windows around me in a circle and tried to use the rotation to switch between them. But the rotation went in like chunks of degrees. It didn't really match up with the circle. So that got boring pretty quickly. But I guess, the nice part about it is I can do this away from my desk. So I spent most of the time editing the podcast sitting on the floor and just using the controller. So yeah, there's that. Like I said, it's really useful for Unity development because I can do Unity development in VR and then run the app in VR without having to put the headset on and off 20 times an hour.
Right.
But aside from that, I don't really see any super compelling workflows for any of the stuff that I do yet.
Yeah. I want somebody to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, part of solving that problem is coming up with a VR headset that I can wear for 8 straight hours.
Yeah.
But
another
we'll
current limitation of the Windows mixed reality platform, and I'm not sure if this is on their roadmap or not, but currently there are basically two different types of UWP apps that you can access in Windows mixed reality. The regular 2D app that just acts as a standalone window, and you just point and click at it to turn it on. And then just interact with it with the mouse and keyboard or the laser pointer on the controller. And then the other is basically an app launcher for a VR experience. So like Minecraft is a good example. You can just drag the Minecraft logo out, stick it on a shelf somewhere, and just point and click at it when you want to go into Minecraft. Steam VR works the same way. There isn't yet an overlap of like, can I make a 3D widget or an app that can do little things inside the clip house, like a tape measure or a sundial, things like that. You can put 3D models in there, but they're not little programs. They're just 3D models. They don't really do anything. Right. Some of them can have animations, but other than that, they're just dumb objects. And I would really like to have the ability to make all kinds of widgets and just useful trinkets to like deck out the environment. If they have that on the roadmap, I will probably just abandon game development and just make those until I die. Like, I love that type of stuff.
Joe's Widget Factory, Inc.
Pretty much, yeah. Just churning out widgets. So yeah, the Samsung Odyssey is getting a bit more comfortable with added use. Like the padding is kind of softened up around the forehead, and I'm just getting more used to it. The other thing is I was looking for a way to solve the issue with the lenses being too close to my glasses, and I spent a couple of days just trying to adjust it in various ways or like keep it pulled out in a certain way. And what I came up with was actually just putting some padding on the little plastic between the two lenses that kind of hit where the frame of my glasses sits on my nose and just holds my glasses back. And so the padding is actually 3 pieces of padding that I cut out of a big sheet of material that came with my air conditioner. I'm supposed to like use it for insulation, and didn't really need it when I installed the air conditioner, so I just cut this up into tiny little squares and used it in there. And they got a sticky side on one side and a non-sticky side, so I just stacked up 3 of them, and they're just a little bit taller than the lenses and do what I need to do. So, quick and dirty solution.
Yeah. If you're trying to visualize this, it's effectively a thing that it's about the size of a chiclet, but about twice as deep. And it's stuck right between the lenses on the VR headset. Just right between them. And so when you put the VR headset on, now it pushes on your glasses right at the bridge of the nose. It keeps your glasses really snug up to your face and away from the lenses of the thing. It's actually really cool. I was impressed by the ad hoc, hacky effectiveness of it.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, it totally works for now. It gets the job done. It's not very elegant, but it works.
If it was a nice matte black, it might help as well.
Yeah, or if it was like one piece instead of three things that I scissored out of a larger sheet. The other thing about the Odyssey, I'm still not used to the short cables. And I tried to order some extension cables. Well, I didn't try to order them. I did successfully order them, and they successfully arrived. They did not work. And I even ordered the exact Amazon Basic cables that a bunch of people on Reddit said worked for them. And this sucks. Like, I've got the right version of HDMI, the right version of USB, and I tried them, and the Mixed Reality app just says, please connect your headset. And I even tried using one of them, like using the extended HDMI cable and only the USB on the regular cable, and then tried the opposite, and that didn't work either. So apparently it just doesn't like it. What I haven't tried yet, and I meant to ask you for an adapter when we were at a user group the other day, my laptop does have a Thunderbolt 3 port on the back, and I wonder if I can use one of those dual adapters that has HDMI and USB on it and pass it in that way.
Okay.
I have no idea if that would work, but I didn't really want to spend $30 on one of those without testing it. So
yeah, I actually had one in my bag that day.
Yeah, and I keep forgetting to ask you. So yeah, you should start wearing that around your neck when you leave the house, and then I'll remember.
That adapter?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, awesome.
Just a necklace of dongles.
Yeah. And there's a title.
So another quick topic before I move on to my development topic. A friend of mine has been over several times to play VR apps and experiences, and I think this was his fourth time. Like, he's played through all of Superhot and probably 20 different apps and experiences over the last couple of months. And every time he's like, yeah, that's cool. Whatever, that's pretty neat. Superhot's a lot of fun. And then I was showing him the Samsung Odyssey and the mixed reality platform, and he found Minecraft, which is a game that I've never really played. Some friends of mine have been into it. But he started playing it. It comes with like an hour and a half free trial. And it's got a VR mode. And he just like flipped out. Like, that was the thing. He's like, how much is this headset? Let me check my specs on my computer and make sure I can run this. Like, I don't know if he ordered one yet, but it's probably only a matter of time. It was just interesting. Like, we've talked several times about how VR is different things for different people. And for him, it was like something that he already really, really liked, being able to see it in a different way. And yeah, He was just pretty enthusiastic about it. He's probably going to go out and get Fallout 4 and a bunch of other stuff like that.
Is there, when you're playing Minecraft in VR, do you have to swing the pickaxe, or do you just hit a button?
You just hit a button.
Okay, good, because I really don't want to swing that pick that often.
Yeah, the other thing, it has two player modes. One is like the VR movement mode, where you move with the thumbstick and you rotate, but you rotate in chunks, like maybe 15 or 20 degree increments rather than smooth rotation. And he didn't like that. He immediately switched it to traditional movement, where you're just like rotating smoothly, and I think you move a little bit faster. And he was really into that because he's so used to the game. I tried that. I'm like, nope, absolutely not. I'm going to fall over if I keep doing this. But I don't know. It was just interesting to me. Like he had just tried Google Earth and Universe Sandbox and a couple other things. I'm like these are the things that really blow me away. And he's like, yeah, whatever. Minecraft, sweet.
Game that I've been able to play for the last decade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did play it a little bit myself, and I don't know if I'll buy it or not, but it's not really high on my list. It's fun. It's kind of nice that I managed to avoid Minecraft all the way up until just the VR version. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's pretty neat.
As a kid who grew up with playing with Legos, Minecraft is the world's best Lego set.
It is, but I already have one of those. It's called Unity. Like I do that type of thing all day.
So you can actually build worlds and have much higher fidelity control over them and the nature of their physics and the nature of reaction. Yeah. So Minecraft is the video game version of Unity development.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. It's neat, but like I said, I don't know if I'll spend $20 on it. So that brings me to my development topic for the week, which is Joe is still stuck on VR movement. So I think the last time we talked about this, I had come up with two kind of working things, one of which is just to use the simple movement code that I had to move a game object around the scene and then attach a nav mesh agent to that and keep me grounded, let me move up slopes and stuff. And I thought I might just keep doing that for the duration of the prototype, but after using it a little bit, I'm like, I just don't like it. I want to be able to jump off things and fall off things, and it was too limiting. The other was a third-party plugin that I had bought on the asset store that had some bugs in it. I reported some bugs and got some feedback from the developer, and they made a couple of small changes. It's still kind of buggy. I did get it mostly working the way that I want, mostly. So the way that it works now is basically you touch on the trackpad and you go in the direction that the controller is facing. They had a mode, their default was to, if you, using the other hand, use the other trackpad, it would double the speed. But they were also calculating the forward vector based on the two forward vectors of both controllers, so you had to be like pointing them in relatively the same direction to get any movement. And I didn't like any of that, and they made an option to turn that off and only use one controller at a time. And that works. There's still some issues with the plugin. Mainly like their design pattern, I just don't think is suitable, which is, I know, hilarious coming from me with my total expertise in this environment. But basically, the way that they're handling this is make a game object, attach a class to it, that adds movement to the controllers and listens for input. So you're not adding, neither of these controllers have a movement class attached to them where you can calculate based on that. So as a result, they're doing some pretty weird and unreliable calculations at the start of a scene to assign the left controller and right controller. And sometimes it works fine and sometimes it doesn't. The same code can have different results if you run the app 3 different times. Like, it's just inconsistent. And sometimes the right controllers get assigned everything, the inputs get assigned to the right things, and sometimes one of those things is off, sometimes both of those things are off. And if they were both off, it wouldn't be that big of a deal because you could just switch controllers. It's no big deal. But what happens is, like, the input will be off and the forward vector will be, like, you click on the trackpad with your left hand, but it's using the forward vector of the controller in your right hand. Like, that is clearly broken. And
or a really cool game design.
I don't think it's cool at all. I think it's really stupid. And basically their excuse is, well, we have to get this at runtime and calculate it out. I'm like, but SteamVR is already doing that. It's got this thing up here that you're supposed to interrogate for that. And they're not calling that. They're doing their own version of that. The other thing that I didn't like about their implementation is they're not doing any axis values on the trackpad. So I can't use forward and backwards, like up and down on the trackpad. I just have to have like go forward or not. So I'm not crazy about that. Other than that, it is working, and what they have working is enough for me to try to backward engineer and see if I can get what I want working. The cool thing about what they did is they've got a rigid body. Not a rigid body. They've got a character controller that they're just calling the move function on. So, they're getting the input and calculating the forward vector of where this thing should be going, and then basically creating a vector and passing that into the character controller .move method to move the player around. And it works pretty well. For some reason, when I try it using my own code and using a component that are attached to each controller, I can get it mostly working, but my game object, my camera rig object, is, I think the technical term is wapperjawed. And I'm just not sure how to, it falls apart basically. So you've got the camera rig parent object, and then the left hand and the right hand, and then the head. The head has an eye and an ear camera, and at runtime, the hierarchy gets switched around a little bit. The eye and the head change place, and the head gets disabled. But at runtime, the hierarchy is basically like this: camera rig on top. At level 2, you've got the controller, the left controller and the right controller, and the camera eye. And inside that, you've got the camera ear and the head target object that I'm giving it. For some reason, I can get my class moving around the scene just fine, or my prefab moving around the scene just fine, but my character controller stays right in the center of the VR play area, which is attached to the camera rig, where the VR camera and controllers are off of that significantly based on where I'm standing in my play space. So at first glance, you put on the headset and test movement for a couple of seconds, and it works just fine until you realize, I can't go through a door. My character controller is back and to the left of me, 1.5 meters. That's what I need to negotiate through the door, not me. So it's pretty messed up at this point. I have tried a number of different things. I tried to do the exact same logic with the interaction system player prefab, and that's not working out too well either. And kind of running out of ideas. This morning I thought of the idea of, and I haven't had a chance to test this yet, but maybe I just need to make, in fact I have tried this, but I need to try it again with a better attempt. But maybe I need another object in that hierarchy. Below the camera prefab, or below the camera rig object, make a controller or body object, and then make the VR camera and hands part of that object. So children of that object. The only thing is that I need to figure out how to, so I'd put the character controller on that object and move it around, but I need to at the same time figure out how to sync its movement up that it always stays below the VR camera. And that's the part that I haven't figured out how to do. And this is all very frustrating because that plugin that I just talked about, all of this is working fine. I can run their app and look at it in the viewport and see that all of their stuff stays vertically aligned. The camera stays where you'd expect it to be, right above the character controller object. And it's set up the exact way that I have, and I just don't know why my code is moving things in different ways. So it's pretty frustrating. I'm kind of sick of this problem. I was sick of it 2 weeks ago. I'm really sick of it now.
One quite possibly terrible idea. How much
Don't
work
know.
would be involved in ripping the scene out of their test code and replacing it with your game? Because you've got a version of code that you can edit where movement works the way you want it to work. Can you just build your game into that?
No, I mean, I probably could, but like I can copy their prefab into my game and it works just fine. What I'm saying is their prefab still doesn't do everything that I want it to do.
Okay,
It's only 75% of what I want.
gotcha.
So not having forward and backwards access on the trackpad, they've got this really wonky rotation thing that I don't like.
Okay.
So yeah, that is an option, but not my ideal option.
You had gone through a number of different paths, and I was losing, probably like you are, losing a little bit of cohesion between which problems are part of which potential solutions.
Yeah. Yeah, so tomorrow I'm going to the co-working space. I haven't been there much lately because I've been doggy sitting a lot, and it's not very nice to doggy sit and then leave the dog alone all day. So I'm going to head there tomorrow and talk to one of the developers there and see if I can get some help. And other than that, I'm kind of at my wit's end. Like I spent 3 hours Friday night and 3 hours Saturday morning banging my head on this and decided like, nope, I'm not spending any more of my time on Earth on this problem. Like I clearly don't get something and I'm just spinning my wheels and frustrating myself. So if I can't figure out or get somebody to help me figure this out and get it working by, tomorrow or this week, I'll probably just abandon this entire game idea. Like if I can't get movement working, I kind of question like, what am I even doing here? And maybe that's just me being overly negative, but it doesn't feel great to be stuck on a problem for weeks and not make any progress. And I don't know, like I feel like moving a player around in a video game should be a pretty fundamental thing that I should be able to grasp, and I'm not able to do that.
I get you.
So yeah, that's my problem. That's my topic. So I'm gonna, give it a little bit of extra effort this week, and then maybe I'll move on to something else. I don't know. VR experiences, anyone? 360 video.
Yeah. Web VR. You got lots of options and ideas.
And there's lots of things I can do without movement. Like going back to a teleportation game. This particular game idea just doesn't work with teleportation.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I got. How about you? So we've got, aside from my gripey negative review of VR movement, what are you working on?
So, as we were talking about a little bit in some of the previous episodes, I've been playing with gravity wells and arcing things around and being able to curve things, and all of my kind of tech tests for that have worked. And so now I'm trying to figure out exactly what game I want to make with this. Like, as I'm playing, I was slowly developing a weird little puzzle game where you are standing in a room, by whatever definition, and there are things in the room that bend gravity, and you're throwing cubes through, or objects through these gravity fields and trying to achieve particular objectives. Hang time, a number of orbits, a target speed. So like, can you arc the piece so that you get a really good slingshot effect and break some speed limit or something like that? Throwing objects through particular planes that aren't in line. So you've got to throw it through one plane, catch a gravity field, and have it curve into the other plane. Things like that. And that's, like, I can make a game out of that. And it will be a relatively standardly structured puzzle game where you hop in and you're just trying to solve these various objectives, and I can put them together in weird ways and come up with some fun stuff, and it's pretty interesting. However, in the back of my head, while I've been playing with this, there's been another older game idea that I had that I've been kind of playing with offline, like literally in the back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a game about kind of throwing asteroids through planetary gravity wells. And the theme was kind of a Golf of the Gods.
Yeah.
Like there's a little spot in space out there that's the hole, and you're trying to plink an asteroid into it, and the problem is that between you and that hole is Jupiter. So you've got to curve these shots in particular ways.
Mm-hmm.
And there can be additional gravity wells, there could be satellites in the way, all sorts of stuff that we could use to mess up this process.
Yeah.
That one also has a difficulty. Like right now, my singularities or my gravity wells are basically point sources. So they apply strong gravity, but have almost no diameter.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to throw close to the gravity well and get a huge slingshot or a very high degree turn. But if I have the same gravity, but then build it into a planet that has a much larger diameter, I have much less access to the really tight turns.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing? Like, more of my shots are going to collide with the planet.
So,
because the planet's in the way of me trying to arc through the tight parts of the gravity well.
So gravity aside for just a second, I had an idea about the front end of the game, or the user end goal. You could do what you just described of like having a point where you're trying to throw the asteroid and use the planets as basically gravity wells to manipulate the object. Or you could be like the universe, you could be playing as the universe trying to destroy civilizations on these planets and hurling asteroids at them. But maybe those civilizations don't want to be destroyed and they've got their own space programs and some guy in a rocket with a bomb. And so you have to get the asteroids in. Maybe you're on the outside of the solar system. You can't just throw directly because they'll detect that. So you have to kind of loop it around Jupiter or hide it in the asteroid belt. And kind of sneak up on the planet and destroy Earth that way. I don't know why so many of my ideas involve destroying Earth. But
well, both of our ideas involve destroying Earth, because part of what I wanted to do with this was if you had a missed shot where you missed short and ended up hitting the planet, I wanted to see like extinction level events play out on the surface of the planet.
Yeah.
Now, it is an interesting statement on comparative theology, where in my world God destroys planets purely by accident because he's trying to do something else and doesn't really care, whereas in your world it's the objective the entire time.
I just assume the universe is out to get us.
And I just assume the universe doesn't care. We are utterly incidental to what the universe is trying to do. So yeah, and then within that, I started with kind of Golf of the Gods, and then in a discussion with you earlier this week, you threw a curveball for kind of a Bowling of the Gods,
which I think is, I don't know, the images in my mind of that game are fantastic.
Oh yeah, no, I mean there's a lot of fun you could have with both. I was kind of looking forward to putting Ganesh in golf pants. But beside the fact. So if you're doing bowling, and I really like the idea, like one of my favorite Wii games was always just the Wii bowling.
Mm-hmm.
Like lots and lots of fun. And as long as the bowling pins are basically in a particular area, then it should work okay. But one of the ideas that we were tossing around was actually distributing the pins like around a planet.
Mm-hmm.
so that you'd have to do 1 or 2 shots with just the right kind of arc to clear those things out. And the problem that I'm running into, like, I love this idea. The problem that I'm running into is I can't figure out how to arrange the bowling pins. So let me describe for you a picture, and let's kind of simplify the system. So it's the sun, earth, and the moon. We have 3 points. There is now a plane of the ecliptic, like where everything is orbiting. We have an arrangement. All of these things are kind of arranged flatly, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying? Now, if I arrange the pins around the planet in the ecliptic, then a bunch of those pins are behind the planet. Mm-hmm. Ooh, I think I may have just figured it out. So, in my version, it's always an overhead throw, because I was still kind of thinking in terms of, it wasn't really golf, it wasn't really bowling, it was an angry god throwing asteroids.
Yeah.
So as an overhand throw, the asteroid ball flies towards whatever planet and picks it up. So if the pins are arranged in a nice neat line on the ecliptic, then if you're off angle by the tiniest bit, you might pick up 1 or 2 pins, then it's going to fly up or down. Mm-hmm. Like your curve is going to be the wrong way. Now I could kind of clamp that asteroid to the ecliptic.
Yeah.
And so you're basically throwing the asteroid in 2 dimensions, but you're visualizing it in 3 dimensions.
Or maybe not 2 dimensions, but think of it as a disc. Like the thickness of the asteroid belt. That's your play area. You can still go up and down, but it's a much narrower area than any direction. That might work as well. So you can like kind of bounce up and up. Maybe not bounce is the right word, but kind of have an invisible floor and ceiling to that space that you can ricochet off of as well.
Well, if I bounce them, that's a thing that you can't see at all, changing the path of the asteroids.
Or hold on a second, bowling in a tube. Can you just get rid of the solar system and put pins all through the tube? And just bowling in a tube? I mean, that's a great name right there. That's the episode title, at least.
Or is it more bowling in a can?
Yeah. The thing about it, that makes your level design really easy. You're in a tube. There's pins in the tube. You got a ball. What else do you need? Parts of the tube apply gravity, so you could just have maybe just square panels that light up and show like this pushes, this pulls, and kind of use that to spin the object around the tube. This is a totally different game than the one we were just talking about a moment ago.
That's a third game.
I might work on this a little bit to see if it's fun. Because you did share your gravity with me. Now that you've bestowed gravity upon me, I must use this power.
Yeah, I gave Joe the code for things that are affected by weird gravity wells. So.
And I immediately made hundreds of kind of neon lighted objects fall from the sky and into various black holes.
It's kind of fun. Mm-hmm. It definitely does fun things visually.
Yeah.
So bowling in a can is neat. The problem that you run into there, and it's not necessarily a stopper, it's just one of the big challenges, is like bowling in general has kind of a specific set of physics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's that the pins are basically going to remain on a plane and they move in a particular direction. Like, I can only figure out how to do bowling in a can if we are not really using my singularity gravity stuff. Like, I'm gonna bowl on the side of the can and try and get like a curving path where the ball swings around the can or tube.
Well, you can still
as it goes down.
You can still use the gravity as a means to like pull the ball up to the side of the cube, but you'd have to, in order to make this a game of skill rather than a game of just random chance, you'd have to almost have like very specific values rather than it's currently got a very organic feel to it when you're throwing things into the gravity well. It's very unpredictable. You'd have to make it very, very predictable that like if I get this close to that object, I get this effect from it.
Right.
Which I'm not sure if that's even doable. But in order to, like, just thinking about it from a pure game design standpoint, it wouldn't be fun to bowl in a tube if it's just entirely random chance. Like I have to feel like I'm doing it, not, oh, I just happened to chuck the ball that the game liked it this way. That wouldn't be very fun.
So if you look at that singularity or the toy code, toy is just things that I was throwing around in the game. They're the things that are affected by the gravity. That's where I put the code for how the movement of the object changes. So the code that does all the work isn't on the singularity itself. The singularity just has a force component. The toy is the one that actually figures out what direction it should go based upon the field of singularities that it's finds itself in. So in that code, there are specific sections that control the power of the force. So basically, like there was that 3 force that sucks something in, and then it falls off by distance. So one of the things that you could do is you could clamp that distance and say, if you're beyond this distance, no force is applied whatsoever. Okay, so it just zeroes out the force from that singularity unless you're close enough. It was one of the things that I actually had in mind as an optimization if I ended up with a game where there were 100 singularities. Like, I don't want to do 100 pieces of point vector math for every single object on the screen every single time to figure out what direction it goes. The singularity on the far side of the board is having a gravitational effect, but it's inconsequential in the frame of everything else that's going on. Like, nobody's going to notice if that disappears. And so you could have a thing where that clamps and says, unless you're within 1.5 feet, no gravity happens. And then honestly, if that happens, the toy could tell the singularity to light up. So you'd actually have a visual indication of when a singularity was actually having an impact and when it wasn't. And then the other thing that it does is it's determining by distance. So you could also kind of clamp on the near side and say, if you get within this, the force is always X. Not it gets stronger as you get closer or something like that.
Yeah.
And so you should get a fairly predictable curve. Maybe. I don't know.
I was trying to figure out how to get up to a certain point and then bounce the object off. I was trying to think about that the other day. I thought that would be a really cool effect. Rather than have things get destroyed when they reach the point, have them just ricochet with like tremendous force outward.
Yeah, well, that's a contact thing. So when the toy collides with a singularity, you can provide a force vector that's strong enough for escape velocity. That just pushes it away in whatever direction you want. Maybe that's based upon where the collision occurs or not. I mean, for my testing purposes, I wanted the toys to be destroyed in some way. Otherwise, my board ended up filled with toys running around all over the place. But
so 2 other quick ideas while we're talking about this, I guess, genre of games, the gravity genre. Something else that I know that you like, rather than golf or bowling, how about pinball? You're already on a plane there. But rather than those little rubber bouncy things, you could have gravity wells that push and pull the ball and or player. The player could be kind of fun if you can lock the rotation of the camera so you are the ball, but you're not spinning like a ball.
sorry, I'm writing things down.
Yeah, or just giant pinball where you're still at the bottom of the thing, but you're just chucking the ball up and playing it that way. Be kind of fun. The other idea is putting the gravity in the hands of the user and actually making the gravity wells almost like Portal. You've got a left hand and a right hand. You've got a black hole on your right hand and a left hole, or a white hole on your left hand. And you just, squeeze the trigger to turn those on and off. And that's how you have to manipulate That's like the only way you can move through the world is by like pulling yourself closer to objects or repelling yourself things, but you have to avoid actually colliding with things. Like that could be kind of a fun three-dimensional area. Like no gravity exists except for the gravity that you hold in your hands, and you got to navigate that environment.
So manipulating objects around or manipulating yourself around.
Mm-hmm. Or both. Like you'd be, if you latch on to a big cube that has mass, it's going to start coming towards you and you're going to start going towards it, perhaps. Or maybe the player just stays stationary the entire time and you have to manipulate the world into, like, all of these go over there and all of those go over there, but they're all commingled.
I like the concept of basically being a gravity wizard.
We are just coming up with show titles.
I want to be a gravity wizard. So there's a ton of ideas there. When you started talking about pinball, I was reminded of one of my favorite games from my youth, which was a pinball construction set.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could make your own pinball games and controlling gravity and things like that. And I don't know if I'd want to make the pinball construction set, but I could do VR 3D pinball.
Yeah.
And what do the paddles look like?
Mm.
Is it just your hands? Like you're standing there at the bottom trying to stop the balls from coming in? So it combines all the fun of pinball with your laser paddleball game.
Maybe
that you like so much.
Maybe pinball stuck to your face, where the hole at the bottom is your face. So you really don't want anything crashing into your face.
It's your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, then the paddles are just your hands or your controllers. Yeah.
Okay.
We can
now, unfortunately, you have to cut that part out of the show because that sounds awesome and somebody's going to do it.
Okay. Let's see what I can do.
I'm kidding. Leave it in. If somebody makes that game, tell me about it and I'll buy a copy.
Yeah.
Like that's...
Yeah, neither of us have any shortage of ideas. For me, anyway, I have a shortage of capabilities, like being able to actually get any of this stuff done.
Well, one of the cool things about being the mouth on the pinball machine is that you don't really have to allow movement at all. It's just the hands.
Yeah. Same thing with the gravity thing. Maybe if I make a scene that doesn't have gravity and just has lots of floating objects with physics, and they can still bounce off of each other, but there is no up or down. Just standing in that world. Maybe you're trying to put the world back together or tear it apart or solve more abstract puzzles. Like, I think that would be kind of fun to play with.
So, bowling in a can, if I'm standing there in the can or tube, say, looking down the length of the tube, that's just basically a straight flat surface. The fun stuff comes when you rotate 30 degrees out of normal and bowl up the side of the can. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, but bear with me because it's going to go someplace a little weird. The thing is, if gravity is always pulling you to the outside of the can, then as you're walking forward with a large enough diameter, you're effectively always walking flat, but the whole tube is rotating around you as you do it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't make you upside down because that's not going to match the gravity. But if you stay right side up and the world rotates around you, I wonder how quickly you can make somebody vomit.
Yeah. I mean, you could keep it simple where maybe the player stays in a non-rotational zone and the tube is broken into sections that can rotate, and you can rotate the entire thing. So maybe you just have a left or right on the trackpad to, okay, I'm going to bowl from over here and then some of the levels that are more complex, like they can be broken into more sections that rotate at different speeds or in different directions, and like objects to avoid. Like that could be kind of fun. And then we're getting away from the gravity stuff entirely at that point. That's just rotating tubes, throwing balls down rotating tubes.
Yeah, but if the gravity is always pulling you to the outside of the tube, like now I want to do golf. Because if you can get the golf ball into the center of the tube, it's effectively gravity free. Because there's gravity pulling in every direction. And so in the middle, there's zero gravity. And so if you watch a lot of sci-fi, you see this as a conceit in movies and TV shows. They did that in Babylon 5.
Yep.
Where he was in the spinal vehicle thing, and there was a explosion, and he had to jump out. And like at first, he's just floating, but he's very, very slowly picking up speed.
Yeah.
And then he's going to collide with the outside of it. So golf in that. And then you were talking about having different kind of like starting positions or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Those are effectively like the locations of the various tees on a golf course.
Yeah.
Now, once again, the real problem is deciding to make just one of them.
Space station golf.
All I wanted to know, Joe, all I wanted to know was where I should put the pins. That's all I wanted to know. That's all you had to tell me. Dave, in my head, I already figured this out. This is where the pins go, and it'll all be okay.
Just down and to the left is where you should put the pins. To the left of the sphere. So yeah, I don't know if this conversation has been helpful. It's been enjoyable. You now have more options to consider. I think I'm going to play around with some of these and maybe, I don't know, do something besides the VR movement for a couple of days.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome to. We only came up with half a dozen major ideas and another dozen minor ones.
Yeah.
So if both of us were picking randomly, we're unlikely to actually pick the same ones anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea of the gravity wizards, like, you know, a white hole and a black hole and two different controllers and interacting with the environment that way. I want to see what I can do with that.
Yeah. In my head, that one went to not so much two holes, but multiple ones, and using kind of a laser pointer to target a singularity and turn it on or off.
Yeah.
So if you're pointing at it and the trigger's down, that singularity is on, but the second you release the trigger or aren't pointing at it, the singularity is no longer going. So you kind of fire them off in sequence or something like that.
Yeah.
You also don't really have to worry about collision at that point, because if you collide with the singularity while it's on, the thing just sticks to it until you release it.
Yeah, another idea with the two-handed approach of like actually holding the white and black hole, you could use the trackpad to control the strength of them. So maybe they could both just be black holes or white holes, and just where you're sliding up and down on the trackpad is affecting their force. And then the trigger to toggle on and off.
Give me a second. I gotta tell you about something. I think it was a little free app. Not Trickster. Where did it go? So I'm on my Mac.
Trying to look at Steam.
Trying to look at Steam, and it's not really letting me see everything. So there was a thing. It was free on Steam that allowed basically each of your hand controls became a gravity source.
Okay.
And then you're just in a black space. And in that black space were all these teeny tiny motes of light. We're talking about like single pixel particles floating around in a VR space. And you could make each of your controllers be stronger or weaker on the gravity field, and you're just moving these things around so you could kind of draw in swaths of motes of light. And then there was another thing that you would hit that would cause the gravity to reverse, and everything would just get dispersed over everywhere, and then you could start drawing it all together again. It was beautiful and fun to play with, and I wish I could tell you the name of it, but I don't know.
Cool.
It was on Steam and it was free. You should take a look.
I will take a look at all of Steam.
I'll find the name for you and tell you, and you can put it in the notes.
Cool. Well, that's pretty much everything I had. Anything else from you, Dave?
No, I just gotta go make some more stuff.
Yeah. I gotta make something or bang my head on movement or both. And
you should go make something. I think you will find it more satisfying.
Yeah, there's that.
Well, that's our show for today. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm VRHermit_Dave.
And I'm VRHermit_Joe. Thanks for listening.